All right, guys. I got to hit that one too. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. A little bit of malfunction over on Instagram. There we go. We doing it? Excellent. We're doing it. All right, guys. Welcome to the weekly rundown. My name is Mike Perna, local real estate agent here in Metro Detroit, servicing all 5 counties. I've got 120 great agents, 3,000 5-star reviews, and that is the pitch. Moving on. As always, we will be going through all of Metro Detroit's news and what has happened over the last week. I've got, I believe, 25 different articles to run through. This is going to be a lot. This is going to be, I want to say, not heavy. Yeah, we'll go with heavy. That's a great word. And I'm also trying to figure out how to see everything on my phone, which I can't do right now, which is hard to do because this is the first time using this new system on going live on Instagram. Now, tell me where you guys are from. I always like to know. I always like to know where you guys are tuning in from. That's how I always like to start the show. So let's do that. Okay, I got Scott over in Rochester Hills. Scott, thank you for joining. I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much. Lauren over in Lyon Township, or South Lyon, I'm sorry. I said Lyon Township because I've got an article about Lyon Township coming up on, of course, one of the hot button issues of the day, which are data centers. So we'll definitely be going over that. Oh, hey, Stephanie. Yeah, I just talked to you actually the other day. I just talked to you. How you doing? How you doing? And then also, guys, which you probably can't tell if it's your first time here, we're not in my usual studio. Like, that's not my studio behind me. That is not a bedroom either. This is a hotel room. So I'm actually in New York City right now for the Inman Real Estate News Conference, which just wrapped up today. Yes, I did bring my extra monitor. I did bring my microphones. I brought everything with me so I can make sure to hit that live as I do every single Thursday. All right, now let's get going. Ooh, that was not what I meant to do. This Instagram thing is a little bit weird. It's like I'm watching myself, but over here and with a little bit of a lag. All right, let's get going. So we've got a whole lot of news going on tonight, my friends. And we are going to start with, of course, taxes, which has been a hot button in both Detroit and Metro Detroit, but basically Detroit for the last couple of months here. If you guys didn't catch it, I was on Fox 2 News with Ronya. She's amazing, going over what was happening with Detroit property taxes and how a lot of people were getting hit with just egregious amounts of taxes. So I'm going to bring this one up to the stage because this is actually the first executive order signed by Mary Sheffield. So Mary Sheffield has now signed her first executive order, and her order is to go and reevaluate the city's assessments, like how much is each property being assessed every year, and then how much are the residents being overcharged. She believes that over the last 10 years, there has been charges by the city in excess of $600 million to the residents that should not have been charged. One of the issues that we have ongoing is that the city of Detroit's property values are climbing at a pretty good clip. So last year, we saw roughly a 10% increase in home value over the whole year. In some areas, literally some neighborhoods, we're seeing as much as a 30 or a 40% increase in value over the last 12 months, or in 2025, should I say. Now, here's the problem. The state equalized value is going up to match those property values. Good news, if you're a resident in the city of Detroit or anywhere in Metro Detroit, because of the Headley Amendment in 1994, or Proposal A, in 1994, your taxes are not going up commensurate to market values. Thank God. And mine aren't either. Thank God. If so, a lot of us would be getting priced out of our houses pretty darn quickly here. Can I get an amen on that? Thank you. But what is happening, unfortunately, is I'm going to bring this tab over here so I can see any comments on Instagram, because Instagram's a little weird as far as that goes. There we go. But what is happening, unfortunately, is okay, that's a lot better. I cannot actually see the comments on Instagram, come to find out. Sorry, guys. You'll just have to, we'll comment anyway, because other Instagram people can see it, which is great. But anyway, where I was going with this was, so your property taxes currently will go up at either the inflation rate or capped at 5% per year. So your property value could go up 25% in a year, but the most it can go up is 5%. This past year, the taxable value on homes in most of Southeast Michigan went up about 2.7% in line with the inflation rate. And that's why you see such small advances in taxes. And it doesn't feel like it's that huge sting every year when you get the new tax bill that says, okay, your taxes went up $100 this year, or $200 this year, or $300 this year, not $1,000 this year, right? Because it keeps the taxes artificially low. Problem comes in when a person goes and sells that house. So when they go and get that home on the market, a buyer's going to come in, a buyer's going to look at it. And a buyer, unfortunately, for the most part, is going to think that they're going to be getting the taxes that are on Zillow or on the multiple listing service, because it's pulling today's data, not the data of what it should be. So the buyer beware that I put out there, and I put it out there on Fox 2 News. I put it out there on a couple of different videos and a couple of different reels. I'm going to say it again because I think it needs to be shouted from the rooftop. Your best bet, guys, is when you're buying a home, ask your real estate agent, what are the taxes going to be for the next owner? As a real estate agent, it takes me about 60 seconds to generate that information and get it to my buyer. Literally, that's as easy as it is. And our status is, with the Perna team, our agents are trained so that when somebody says, hey, I'm interested in this home, they say, great, let me look up the taxes real quick. So you get a actual real idea of what that monthly payment will be based off the real data, not based off of the data on the multiple listing service. Now, it's still an estimate, right? It can still be up or down about 5% either way, but at least it's not going to jump on you 40%. So what's happening is a lot of people are buying in the city of Detroit and its surrounding suburbs. And then they're thinking, okay, great, my payment is $3,000 a month or whatever that number is. And then 6 months later, they get two things. They get a new assessment saying, oh, no, you now have to pay an extra $200 a month or $400 a month or $700 a month. I've seen one as high as $1,300 a month, literally. And that one made Channel 7, by the way, $1,375 a month more per month because your new tax bill is this. And by the way, you also owe us for the escrows that are not any longer filled enough to make that next tax payment. So on top of that $1,375 per month, you also owe us a check for $4,000. Due now, by the way. So that is the big problem with taxes here in Detroit specifically, but also all of Metro Detroit. So the bill in 1994 made perfect sense because home values were going up around 4% per year, 4.2% per year on average, and they plodded along pretty regularly. And wages were increasing about 6% per year on average. So they were actually the wages were actually outpacing taxes and also outpacing home value increases, which made perfect sense. But with COVID, and with everything else happening in the world where property values just shot through the roof, it no longer makes sense. And we need Lansing to do something, to act on something. And please give me an amen if you believe that I'm right on this one. Do something, because a lot of Michiganders are being forced to rent instead of being able to purchase, which is also why the first-time buyer average age right now is 40 years old. It used to be 27. Like back when I was growing up, it was literally 27 years old for the first-time buyer. Now it's 40 in Michigan because of problems like this, because the millage rates are just too high, because this antiquated bill that worked great through the 90s and early 2000s no longer does work in this post-COVID world. All right, that's my soapbox, and that's my rant on property taxes. Thank you guys for coming to my TED Talk. Let's move on to yet another thing here. Now, we are still talking about taxes, of course, because that is the name of the game right now. So let's remove that. Let's remove that. And then we're going to add in. Yep, that's the one that I want. So the new CEO of Bedrock, there we go. So the new CEO of Bedrock himself has now started to call for some tax reforms. However, thankfully, he does not know exactly what reforms are needed. Now, some of the reforms that he called for was to try to lower the millage rate through a couple of different ways. One of them would be tax abatements on the most expensive properties in Detroit, because some of those properties are paying in excess of $30,000 and $40,000 per year in taxes. And that's just untenable to maintain over a long period of time. It's just too much. Some of them some people now are buying homes in the $400,000 and $500,000 range and getting hit between $16,000 and $20,000 a year in property taxes, which is outrageous. There are certain areas of Detroit where the millage rate is way the heck up at 82.2 mils, which is crazy. One of the reforms that he called for is adding a city-specific or a zone-specific excise tax. Okay. And I'll talk about what that is a little bit and why we can't do it right now. We would need a constitutional amendment through the state legislature to do it. So currently, excise taxes happen every day of the week. We all pay them in some form or fashion or another. I'll tell you what those are in a moment and what we pay. but it is a blanket across the state. When one cannot be charged a higher or lower excise tax in the state of Michigan, depending on where you are. Now, another word for excise tax is the sin tax, right? So this is the tax that goes on alcohol or tobacco products or weed or CBD, right? Whatever. Call me out on that one. So sorry, guys. Thank you, though. Or gas tax, as an example. So it must be uniformly applied through the state. What the Bedrock CEO is calling for is saying, hey, look, what if we just raise the tax, let's say, on alcohol sales in this city, like a Detroit or a Pontiac or a Flint, because those are the three most affected cities by the high property tax. Of course, all of the cities are. I'm not discounting anywhere in Metro Detroit. I'm in Royal Oak, and I feel like I pay too much in taxes. Just putting it out there. I feel like everybody always pays too much in taxes. But he's thinking with the excise tax, we can siphon off that income and we could do a 10 or a 20-year tax abatement. If we were going to do a 10-year tax abatement, we could reduce the millage rate from 82 mils down all the way down to maybe a 24 or a 30. Or if we do a 20-year tax abatement, it would still lower the taxes down to maybe 48 mils, which is much more in line with most of the suburbs. So after 20 years, of course, the tax abatement would leave unless it was renewed, and then would go back up to the 82. But 20 years is a long time. And that is a long-term relief plan for Detroiters. Personally, I think it's a great idea. And is he saying he has all the great ideas? No. Is he saying this is a potential great idea? Yes. Do I think it's a potential great idea? Yes, because I think a tax on something like this, where it's more of an entertainment thing, more of a choice like alcohol or tobacco, I think this makes great sense because you can just choose to not go buy a bottle of a six-pack of beer, basically, right? So that is one of the proposals that he would like to see on the ballot. Of course, the major proposals that would need to be done almost all have to be done at the Lansing level. So if we were going to choose to do an excise tax, we would need to do an amendment to the state constitution. If we were going to choose to actually reduce the millage rates on a significant level, we would have to change the way school taxes are done because those are all put into a pool and then redistributed out by the state. There are multiple changes that cannot be done within the city of Detroit by the city council or Mary Sheffield or anybody to greatly reduce the taxes without the help of Lansing's lawmakers, which is also why Mary Sheffield did very purposefully visited Lansing and met with multiple lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. That was her first duty of business to try to put that out in front of them because she knows it's going to take probably a year of campaigning with these guys to get somebody to look at a bill like this, and then another year to get it passed, and then another year for it to actually have real meaningful effect for Detroiters. This is a long play, guys. Taxes are not something that is very easily changed here in the state of Michigan, which can be good or can be bad depending on who's doing the changing and what changes are being done. Just putting that out there. Okay, now we're going to move on. We got a lot of data center things going on in our life today. It's craziness. So let's start pulling up some of these articles. Remove that one. And then let's bring up our first of the data center battle stories today. And yes, there are several because this is a big hot topic in Michigan right now, as there are 16 separate data center proposals that are out on the table that are looking to be put into place. All right, here we go. So U of M, and they're not calling it a data center, right? They're calling it a computing facility, right? U of M is trying to work with the residents of Ypsilanti, try to educate them or try to persuade them. Persuade is probably the better word, to say, hey, look, we already had made these plans long before all the other controversial data centers came in for these computing centers, and they're calling them computing centers, right? We want to continue with this computing center, even though the residents of Ypsilanti say, you know what, we don't want it. We don't want it taking away our water. We don't want to take away our natural resources, our energy. They're very afraid, and rightfully so, of those costs going up, the cost of water and the cost of electricity. And we're going to talk about what DTE has to say about the cost of electricity with data centers in a minute. So they held a town hall. They had DTE out. They had, of course, U of M out. They're trying to persuade the residents of Ypsilanti to say, look, there's nothing to be upset about. These plans are already approved. Things are already in motion. Let's just continue the motion that we're already going in. And of course, the citizens, the residents of Ypsilanti are not happy with this, as they should not be happy with this. So that is number one on the data center front today. Let's go to number two on the data center front. I'm pulling it up. So this one I thought was actually really, really interesting. I don't know how I actually feel about it. So I would love some comments on what you guys are feeling on this thing. Okay, so I got to bring that up to the screen, don't I? There we go. All right, so there was a data center proposal that went out to it's debatable, 9 or 10 different cities. They were all put on one email in Michigan, 5 of which are here in Southeast Michigan, saying, hey, look, we have a data center proposal. We're going to give you 48 hours to consider it and say yes or no. First ones to say yes gets it. But here's the interesting thing. The proposal went out at 11:36 on Friday, January 16th, with a 5 p.m. deadline of Monday on Martin Luther King Day, which is a banking holiday. So this really literally gave these guys, let's call it five banking working hours, the city councils and the mayor's office and everybody to even think about this. What's also interesting about this specific data center is that it had pledged to not use any of the water resources. It wasn't even going to tap into the water system of any of the cities that was going to be put in. They were going to use a rain catching system, an atmospheric system, in addition to an atmospheric moisture catching system, so as not to use any water, which is the first time that's happened in Michigan. That proposal of this type has been happening in Michigan. And it was not going to tap into or tie into DTE in any way or any local power grid, right? Which is all DTE around here. They were instead going to use solar power and then batteries to store the solar power for, of course, at night, to power through the night, and they would drain the batteries, then recharge them during the day, blah, 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 right? I think, and I hearken back to that video that Elon Musk did, gosh, this must be 8 or 9 years ago, maybe even longer, where he went into a neighborhood and he re-roofed 4 homes or 3 homes or whatever it is, and he put a stage in the middle of the street and he said, look at these homes and look at these power banks, and we're able to actually partially power this house as well as a Tesla through the electricity that's being produced from the solar roof. And the roofs actually looked really good. They looked like really nice roofs. And this home over here, we're able to power the whole house. And this home over here, we're actually selling electricity back onto the grid because they have a surplus of electricity. I remember that video and thinking, man, this is the future. Of course, let's be real, that never happened. So Elon Musk's roofing companies, how that ended up was they ended up taking a bunch of orders, taking a whole bunch of down payments, and then having to refund them all because a couple years later, they just said, hey, look, we're just never actually going to get to this. Almost a Cybertruck type of thing where they took like $100 from people during the Cybertruck, promising the Cybertruck would be out, and then it took like 4 years for it to actually hit the road. Go figure. I still think it looks like a refrigerator driving down the road. But personal opinion, just not my aesthetic. If you love the Cybertruck, great. Throw a link in, throw a comment in. If you hate it, great. Throw that comment in as well. I just don't think it's particularly a good looking vehicle. That said, I like my truck. Just saying. Okay. So what was really interesting was the 48 hours, no tie into the water system, no tie into DTE, self-sufficient. Now that said, of the 9 cities, and it was 9, I just looked back at it, of the 9 cities that this proposal went out to, exactly 0 of the 9 replied back, yes, we'll do it. Exactly 0 of the cities replied back and said, hey, we want to have more discussion and talk about it. Like, it just was so fast over a holiday weekend. I don't know why they did it this way, over a holiday weekend, that there was just no response at all for the most part. If there was a data center that would be responded to, this is the one that you want to respond to, in my opinion, and say, hey, let's have some more conversation because we want to actually get some engineers on this. We want to get some researchers on this and some scientists to check your data, your numbers, and say, hey, is this really a reality that you can do this without using any sort of water or without having to tie into DTE? Because for me, that's hard to believe, because, and we're going to see with this next one, just how much power and how much water is being used by some of these large scale data centers. Now, granted, this was a much smaller one, but some of these data centers are using an outrageous amount of energy and outrageous amount of water. Let's actually go ahead and start getting that one pulled up. And this one is actually going to be named after a dessert. And as an Italian, one of my favorite desserts. Oops, stay with me, guys. I'm pulling it up right now. I really should have somebody else in the studio help me out with this. I mean, granted, I'm in a hotel room tonight. I don't have my Lions logo, which I'm hopeful for 2027, but not too hopeful, but hopeful. Okay, guys, Project Cannoli, and this thing is a huge data center, 800,000 square feet. Project Cannoli is looking at the Great Lakes Water Authority to supply its water, right, to their data center. So we started with evaporative data centers. Like, that's the oldest of the technologies, right? And what happens is water goes into the data center and it cools the data center. And as it goes out, it actually goes through sponges and air's blown at it and it evaporates, literally. And it's using tens of millions or hundreds of millions of gallons of water per year, depending on how big that data center is. Okay. This is one of the issues with the data centers. Then we had closed loop data centers. Now that still uses water, but it uses much less. The average data center, like the one in Lyon Township, will be a closed loop data center. With that one, how that works is they have to fill the data center, which will take 10 million gallons of water. And then just because of leakage and just because of still some evaporation, they're going to have to top up with 8 million gallons of water per year. Now, I'm going to put that in context. I'm not saying that's a small amount of water, but I do want to put it in context. That is about 1/5 of what the average Michigan golf course uses per year. So the average Michigan golf course hovers, depending on the year, depending on how much rain there is and sun there is, between 34 and 42 million gallons of water per year. That's a lot of water. Now, granted, a lot of these guys are on wells, so they're not tapping into systems, which is great. But it's still, let's call it 34 million on the low end per year. And a closed loop data center would use about a third of that at 8 million per year. That's not this. That's not this. They want to build over on Lake Michigan and use and tap into the Great Lakes Water Authority. By the way, the Great Lakes Water Authority currently puts water into 40% of Michigan homes. Okay, let's put that out there. And they're looking at using 1.3 billion gallons of water per year. That is 50 golf courses. That's more than 50 golf courses, 1.3 billion gallons. Now they're trying to say, guys, it's not a lot of water. We've got 2.2 quadrillion gallons of water in Lake Michigan. I feel like 1.3 billion of anything is a big number. If they don't feel like 1.3 billion is a big number, they can write me a check for 1.3 billion. And I'm happy to take it and cash it. Just saying. In addition to that, this specific data center would be using and tying into the whatever power grid is out on Lake Michigan. They would be using approximately 1.3 gigawatts of electricity. Now, to put that into perspective, DTE currently, and yes, I have all these numbers. I don't know why in my head. I don't understand why all these facts and data. Thank you for that comment. Thank you for the question. Yes, it is just kind of in there. But you know, I love Metro Detroit. I've been studying for a long time. Back to the show. DTE currently produces about 11 gigawatts of electricity. They're looking for 1.3 gigawatts. So they're literally looking for over 10% of all of Metro Detroit homes and businesses currently use for one facility. Just want to put that in perspective. I'm just going to leave that nugget right there. And then in other DTE news, and this is, again, I feel like this is a battle that we're losing on the local level, especially. We've got Lyon Township, right, which is right in our backyards, guys. I mean, we're talking like Irwin's, right? Well, that's more South Lyon, but still, which is not Irwin's anymore. If anybody knows what Irwin's is now, throw that in the chat. A little fun trivia fact for the day. Okay, so here's one of the issues that Lyon Township is running into, right? So way back in 1992, they rezoned a bunch of things because Lyon Township specifically wanted to move away from some of the cleaner energies like these big solar panel farms, right? Which could be construed as computerized, let's call it, right? So back in 1992, they did a bunch of rezoning. So did Howell, and so did many, many communities across Metro Detroit, because they didn't want these big solar farms, just what they consider eyesore solar farms, just dotting the landscape as the clean energy kind of conversation was starting up, right? Remember, this is before Al Gore released his documentary. This was, but just before or during when General Motors had their first EV on the road, that they sucked all those, they put a couple hundred EVs on the road, then they sucked them all back up. They actually bought the cars back because they didn't want to make them. And they put them on a lot. They were left to rot, and then one day they disappeared. There's a whole documentary around this. It's really interesting. And there's like conspiracy theories around this. But anyway, so because of that, data centers or computing centers or any of those centers have been reclassified in a lot of townships like Lyon Township as light industrial, right? And anything that's energy producing instead of energy consuming is not industrial at all, right? Those were the distinctions made back in 1992 in Lyon Township. This is why even when city councils and people want to fight this, it's a legal fight that they will actually lose. Because if the data centers are just following all the city ordinances, all the planning ordinances, all the zoning ordinances, then even if the township takes them to court and says, hey, we don't want you here, Oracle, we don't want you here, OpenAI, we don't want you here with your data center, Microsoft, they're going to come back with their army of lawyers and say, so sorry, too bad, you wrote the law that allows me to do this. And the judge will be forced to go their way because it is the law. So there are some cities out there that are now putting 6-month moratoriums on approving anything of this type, right? And because they're putting these moratoriums more blanket across multiple industries, they're not being prejudiced, let's say, against one specific industry, even though we know what it is. So Howell, for example, has just put a 6-month moratorium in on even looking at plans for a data center by the assessing office and the building office. Northville famously put in the first one at a year. Chesterfield Township is looking at putting in one for 1 year, possibly 2. So there are multiple communities that are looking at this kind of pause because it allows them time to reorganize their own city ordinances, get attorneys in there to say, hey, what do we need to do to reshape this so we take back the control from our own legal system that we devise, by the way? Just putting that out there. So the goal there, of course, is they want to reorganize. Now with Lyon Township, in all reality, it is probably too late, right? It was too late back in 92 when they reorganized their ordinances and zoning laws in the first place. More than likely, they would lose. And of course, I'm not an attorney. There's not legal advice for Lyon Township or anybody. But more than likely, they would lose a legal challenge if they put one out there to the data center. And it would just cost the city millions of dollars in attorney and court fees. That's the most likely outcome, unfortunately, for people that don't want it there. And that said, I did have, by the way, we did have our first call from a Lyon Township resident that lives there that is considering putting their home on the market because they don't want to be in a city with a data center. So this is a real thing that could affect property values, because if more and more people start thinking in that direction and more people start voting with their feet as to where they want to live or what they want to live by, then it will start affecting property values in a real way. And that is one of the other major concerns outside of just simply environmental. And it's honestly a valid concern. It is honestly a valid concern. Okay, so let's go to the final piece of the data or the final reporting on energy or data centers right now. Here we go. All right, guys. So I feel like this article is just tone deaf. Like for real. For like, wow. Like, okay. So here's what's happening. The CEO of DTE Energy is claiming that data centers are going to help keep rates down for customers here in Metro Detroit in the 5-county area. I'm going to wait for you to stop laughing because that was my first reaction. So literally, her belief is that when data centers come in and they partner with them, they're going to charge enough money to be able to keep rates down for residential users. Okay. That said, this is the same company that took a whole bunch of private flights with their CEOs and executives and all these other people, spent, I don't know, God knows how many tens of millions of dollars after the audit that they weren't supposed to spend on all of these different luxuries, and then turned around and raised DTE rates on us about a year ago, then turned around and did an even bigger raise again, and then turned around and they're saying, hey, look, we're going to do a $299 credit card charge if you're using a credit card instead of a debit card. I'm sorry, credit card and debit card instead of linking a bank. So just want to be clear, this is the same company that's saying that. Now, that said, every study out there has shown that in the majority of cases, as data centers go in, rates climb. They climb for the residents in and around those data centers. And here's the reason. So the 2 data centers right now, they're being considered, I'm sorry, 3. The 3 data centers in Metro Detroit, they're being considered right now, that are going in actually, that will be hooked up onto DTE's grid, will be using a total of 4.5 gigawatts of electricity. The grid currently produces 11 gigawatts of electricity. I'm not kidding. This one data center in Lyon Township is going to be 25% of the current output. Like, so whatever DTE puts out today for us, 25% of that will be required just to power that one data center. You can't tell me that rates are absolutely not going to go up or are not even likely to go up if data centers are using that much electricity. And again, that is one person's opinion. That's my opinion. Granted, my opinion clashes with our DTE CEO, but we're just going to see where the chips lie. Don't be surprised if we see a rate increase late in the year. Just putting it out there. They've done 2 in 12 months. They put on credit card fees for the first time ever. Don't be surprised if it happens. Okay, guys. Now, next up in the news, and yes, we've got some ice news here in Michigan that's happening. Let me share screen. And actually, the title of the article and the actual article itself is different. All right, so number one, we've got ICE protests that have happened now in Rochester Hills. In addition to that, Livonia, Farmington Hills, downtown Detroit, all over Southeast Michigan. There are a lot of people calling for either the defunding, the reduction in funding, or the reallocation of ICE agents. One of those three things, or a combination of all of them. And what that looks like is a lot of people are calling for ICE to be out of the major cities, like Minneapolis. They're not doing it right. They're messing it up. There are a lot of things, of course, going wrong with this situation right now. And people are taken to the streets as news keeps on mounting of things happening where ICE just looks really bad, right? And I'm not going to go political. I never go political. Do I think do we need border control? Sure. Minneapolis is on the border, guys. Just putting it out there. Are there problems in Minneapolis? Sure. Are we handling them the right way without getting warrants? Probably not, because this is still the United States of America. And that is as far as I'm going to go on that. But ICE also announced oh, come on, bring it up here. There we go. So ICE announced that they're looking at Romulus, Michigan for a 500-bed holding facility for people that they find in and around Metro Detroit that are not immigrants that they're looking to deport out of the country. And why Romulus? Because it's near the airport, and the airport's probably going to be the easiest way to get people out of the country, right? It's just the way it is, right? It makes sense. But I want to make sure that everybody in Metro Detroit knows that these guys are looking to build an entirely new facility with 500 beds. So that doesn't sound like divestment to me. That sounds like entrenchment. Whether you're for or against it, that just is what it is, entrenchment. Okay, that's all I got on that one. And again, happy to take any comments. Where are my people on Instagram? I can't even see you. And I'm so sorry about that, guys. Oh, there you are. Still can't see you. Great. All right, let's go to the next thing. And this is the last thing about ICE here in Metro Detroit. And if there's any one good thing that could come of this, I guess this is it. Okay, so there we go. So faith leaders in Michigan, and more specifically Southeast Michigan, have come together. When I say faith leaders, I mean the three major faiths that are here in Southeast Michigan. Christian leaders, Jewish leaders, and Muslim leaders have all actually come together and under one roof have called for the reduction in ICE funding. So if there's any one positive that could come out of this, is that any fighting between the faiths can be put aside for a moment to tackle a greater human issue. This is not a good thing, guys. I mean, but if there was any one good thing, and again, there are different ways to accomplish this as well that don't involve doing what we're doing. And that's all the time I want to spend on that. And not even going to lie. I just want to get off that. Now we're going to talk about the guy that never seems to go away. He has been plaguing Detroit and Metro Detroiters for what feels like a decade and a half, which is really interesting to me. And when I say this guy never goes away, I mean, he literally just never goes away. I love this. I mean, I don't love it, but I just love so much that, like, at least, okay. Kwame Kilpatrick is back in the news again. Why? For two reasons. One, he's been collecting an $8,000 pension. I'm not kidding. A convicted criminal. The only reason why he's out is because Trump pardoned him. Has been collecting $8,000 in pension benefits for years, which now has been ordered to be stopped. But for the love of love, come on, guys. Now that's an oversight. The Department of Justice finally did order that to end, thankfully, right? But he also still owes the city and the residents of Detroit over $800,000, which was part of a settlement for his whatever it was, money laundering, racketeering. I mean, take your pick. He got the book thrown at him. Now the reality is, are we ever going to see that money? Detroiters, are we ever going to see that money? No. In fact, let me bring up this second article. And then that's all I'm going to say about Kwame. Because I think that is all the time he deserves. That's more than the time he deserves. Experts say it. Kwame Kilpatrick has an $831,000 secret deal with the city of Detroit to make restitution to Detroiters for a lot of the money he embezzled and stole and because of racketeering. The reality is they're never going to collect. But let's just call it what it is. This is a write-off, unfortunately. He has a history of dodging debts. He has a history of dodging legal obligations. And even though there was a demand order by the U.S., who did it? U.S. District? Yep, not even Michigan, U.S. District. By the U.S. District Judge Nancy Edmonds on Monday. The reality is we're never going to see that money come back into the city, which is unfortunate. And I know, guys, we're not talking about hundreds of millions of dollars here, right? This is not like I'm trying to think of this is not like the Ponzi guy, right? With 40 billion embezzled or whatever that looked like, right? Let's put this in perspective. The city of Detroit last year had a surplus of roughly $105 million. This is $800,000. This is about 0.6% of that, right? Nobody's getting rich off it. We're not lowering our property taxes off it. We're not doing anything great inside the city with it. But I think the point needs to be made, and they do need to try to collect, even if it costs as much to collect as the money itself, that people are not allowed to steal from the city of Detroit and the residents of Michigan and get away with it. So I think Nessel and I think whoever this judge is should throw the book at this guy and do everything necessary to either put it behind bars to pay or find the money somewhere in his finances and take it. Personal opinion, tell me I'm wrong. I got a late comment. You don't want ice in your state. Thank you for the comment. I appreciate that, Chris. And I guess 1 and 2, they're already here, and 2, I mean, it's Michigan. It's February. We got a lot of ice of multiple kinds. But thank you for the comment. I appreciate it. Keep them coming. All right, let's go to the next one. So now we're moving on to the jobs front, and there are a couple different things going on in the world of jobs in Southeast Michigan. One of them is actually a very cool one, not the first one. How are we doing on time? Oh my gosh, we're doing gorgeous. All right, so Volkswagen had said that they were going to take their 1,100 jobs out of Michigan. They were actually going to lay off 200 people anyway, so 900 jobs out of Michigan, right? They decided to relocate to another state, which is more tax advantageous and all those things. So the state of Michigan decided to counter Volkswagen and say, hey, look, we're going to give you $4 million. Now, was this $4 million in tax reduction or tax incentives or educational programming to help their employee? No, this was a grant. And a grant is straight up, I'm going to give you this. And if you do this thing for this certain amount of time, that debt is forgiven. So they got $4 million to leave Volkswagen in Michigan with 900 employees. And these are good paying jobs. Like, let's be real. These are good paying jobs. We do want these jobs in Michigan. Is it worth $4 million, guys? That's the question I have for people out there in the world. Was it worth $4 million of taxpayer money to pay Volkswagen to keep 900 jobs in Michigan? I honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. Did I see InstaWash? Yep. No, thank you. Nobody is above the law. Thank you. I do appreciate that. You know, I really want to see these comments on Instagram. I just can't figure out how to get them into StreamYard. If anybody knows how you do it. Christianos. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just looking back through some of these comments, making sure I'm getting everybody. There we go. Why should the inner cities, urban cities, pay more in taxes when Detroiters are already going through enough? Thank you. That is a great comment. I really appreciate that. Do you think that no property tax for seniors might become a reality? Yes and no. For veterans, yes. There is currently an idea about property taxes. This is good. There's currently an idea floating around Michigan Congress saying that if people don't have children in schools, should they be forced to pay a school tax? Now, that not necessarily answers the senior question directly, but it would indirectly answer the senior question if they don't have any school-age children at home. So no, I don't think it's going to become a reality. This is a great question. What variables determine the next buyer's taxes? Excellent question. It is people mistakenly think it's the sales price of that home, right? It's not. It's the sales price of 3 homes around it in that given year. So what happens is every city undergoes its reassessment every single year. So when you own a home, you get a actual notice of assessment from the city saying, okay, this is what your old millage rate was. Millage rate. This is what your old millage rate is. This is what your new one is. This is what your old SEV is. This is what your new state equalized value is. And this is what your new taxable value is. And this is what your old taxable value is. You get those numbers, right? And the state equalized value, which is going to be the biggest of the numbers, is going to be based on what 3 properties in your neighborhood or in your square mile or on your block sold that most closely resemble yours. Do you have a 4-bedroom home? Great. These 3 were 4 bedrooms that sold. Do you have 2.5 bathrooms? Great. These have 2.5 bathrooms. And then they're going to weight them. Oh, this one only had 2 bathrooms, was missing a half. So we're going to dock this property this amount because it has a half bath less. And in our city, we feel a half bath is worth $8,000, right? So we're going to move and jigger that number every year just a little bit. It goes higher based on the sales prices of 3 properties. That's why a lot of people say your state equalized value is traditionally 42 to 44% of what your home value is, because it's always a 6-month to 8-month trailing number. Now, when you buy a home, right, your taxes will then be the state equalized value, the highest number, not the taxable value, what the current homeowner is paying. So what happened in 1994 is with Proposal A, they said, okay, look, home values, we're not going to raise property taxes based on the value of the home in case we get a couple of big jump years, like 6-7% that outpace wages. But what we will do is we'll cap it at inflation because it will just get as expensive as everything else, or we'll cap it at a max of 5% in case inflation flies up to 10%, which happened, right? It happened right after COVID or during COVID when everybody was flush with a little bit of cash. They were sitting at home, so they just started buying stuff. So inflation went up. Plus our supply chains were all shut down for basically 6 months to a year, depending on what state and what country you were. So what I'm trying to say is your taxes will be predicated on 3 home sales in that community, determining what your state equalized value is. That is not what's put on the multiple listing service, and it's not what's on Zillow. Both of those things, and realtor.com or homes.com or any of the other sites out there, even my website, both of those things, all of those things do not pull what the next property tax that will be paid will be. They only pull the current, right? Which is an ongoing problem. Now, you can, as a consumer, go to literally just Google Michigan Property Tax Estimator. Okay. If you Google Michigan Property Tax Estimator, then there's going to be a couple of pull downs. It'll have what city, it'll have what school district, if that city has multiple school districts. So take like Livonia, for example. Livonia, you've got Livonia schools and Clarenceville schools. Novi, you've got Novi, Northville, and a little section in Walled Lake. Troy, you've got Troy, Warren Consolidated, Bloomfield, and Avondale. You actually have 4 districts in Troy, as an example. And each one has a slightly different millage rate because of millages that were passed for the individual district, right? And then you put in your state equalized value. What the state equalized value is, the house you're buying, not the taxable. You pop in the state equalized value. Now, the state equalized value is a matter of public record. So you can Google that as well, and you can find that on the county site. The easiest way to do it, though, is really ask your real estate agent. And so what I do as a real estate agent, when I have a home that somebody's interested in, I go and do the calculator myself for them, and I let them know, hey guys, look, the current owner is paying $4,500 a year in taxes. The next owner is going to be paying $7,200, which means that your property tax will be going up $2,700 on this home, which is $230 a month, $240 a month. I want to be sure, as your representative, because I'm the person I'm representing you in the negotiation of the home. I'm representing you in being sure you're not buying something that you don't want to afford, which is just as important, frankly, just as important. Do you want to handle the extra $230 more than what your lender quoted you on this home? Because guys, the lender's using the same tax information as the real estate agents, as the counties, all the stuff that's out there on public record. As far as Zillow goes, or realtor.com, or the multiple listing service, right? So when they give you that quote that says, okay, your property, your monthly payment is going to be $3,250 a month, but then it goes up $250 a month to $3,500. I don't want you to have that surprise, right? That's the important thing. That's a great, great question. Let me just go back through, make sure I got all of them. All right, I'm going to look at Instagram between each and every one of these just to make sure I don't miss something. Thank you guys for being patient with me on that one. All right, let's giddy up. Let's go to the next article. Where are we at even? What are we doing? Who are we talking about? Oh, we're talking about Volkswagen. Right. Should they get the money? Who knows? I mean, personally, I think for the right number of jobs, it's going to add the right tax base back into the state of Michigan, where the state's going to get those taxes back one way or another through state income taxes, through gas tax, through other taxes. It is okay to give some sort of incentive because all the other states are doing it too, right? Yes, we are the United States, but we're most certainly not united on where employers should be. Again, one man's opinion. Nope, that was not the one. I need to remove it. Let's move on to the next one. There we go. This was pretty cool. Come on, buddy. And in a turn of events, as it turns out, Metro Detroit is a tech hub. It is. And it really is. Like, we've got Google and we got some AI companies here. We got a nice drone company coming in from California, which I'll be talking about. Anyway, NVIDIA-backed AI smart meter company moves its company headquarters to Ann Arbor, Michigan. And with it, they're bringing in 80 jobs, right? Well, they're actually bringing in 65 jobs. There are 25 people with this company that are already actively working here. They're just moving to a bigger facility and they're relocating the rest of the people. Now, the smart meter company, what this does and what this company's goal, and this is part of the reason why they work with NVIDIA, is they're trying to work towards better and more efficient battery tech. Okay. So they're trying to elongate the life of batteries because that's one of the big common complaints for all batteries, whether it is a car or your iPhone, a cell phone, right? Is that it never seems to last long enough and you always got to recharge at the most inconvenient times. So this company is focused on trying to solve for X being how much longer can we get out of the same batteries with new technology and different technology, which is actually pretty cool, I think. I think it's pretty cool. But again, we're adding some high paying jobs in the Southeast Michigan, which is what I always like to see, even if it's 55. Even if it's only 55 of them, it's 55 more than we had yesterday. So let's keep on keeping on. Get rid of that one. Now this one is more of a sad turn of events as far as employment news goes. Okay, guys. So I reported on this a little while back where there was an article that came out, factually based, that under Whitmer, Detroit had stagnant job growth. Very true. Very true. I actually talked to one of our local potential state Congress people about this specific issue because he had questions about what was going on in 48239. I forgot which zip code, but he wanted to know a little bit more about the issues. I'll tell you about that conversation as well. So here's where our jobs are growing in healthcare because Michigan is getting older and sicker, which is true. The average age of a Michigander is going up, not down. And that's a sign of new kids it's actually a lot of younger people not staying here first, but then when they leave and they have kids, then they're not having them, of course, in Michigan, right? Now, Michigan's job growth, it was about a 0.5%, about 0.5% last year, which is under the national 2%, right? So we are actually stagnating. So going back to the Volkswagen, is it a good thing or not a good thing? I think we need to be fighting for every single job that we have in the state to keep the state economies going. We do have finally a population increase in Michigan. We do have finally population increases happening in Detroit, but we need to give these guys jobs. So here's what we talked about. In this gentleman's district, the 313 building in downtown Detroit, it's that nicer, newer apartment building. It's right on the corner. There was a French restaurant in the base, the Statler. The Statler was in the base. It's actually becoming something else now in partnership with another pub. I reported that on a while back. That is in receivership. That's in Chapter 11. Reorganization of debt right now. He didn't know, right? It was just reported, just like a month, not even a month before him and I had talked. Now, here's the problem. So that place is charging, starting at least last I checked, this could be different. If you know the numbers, guys, put it in there. I want to know if you know. Well, not that if you know, but if you know, I want to know. They're charging starting at, let me flip back my Instagram again. There we go. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wash. Welcome any and all jobs. Yes, sir, you're right. Or ma'am. I'm so sorry to make that prejudge. That was not intended. Anyway, so getting back to it. That building is in receivership because their rents for a studio, which is like, I think it's like 380 square feet, it's tiny, start around $2,000 a month. As you get into the 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and then eventually they have a couple of 3 bedrooms, not a lot of them. Now you're talking about 3,500 plus a month. The top ones above 4,000 a month. The problem is if we don't have higher paying jobs being added to Michigan, but we have all of this higher charging housing like that, the Joe Louis apartments. There's another apartment complex that's over in Midtown that's going to start at 3,000 a month. Like that housing is unsustainable because we need jobs for people to be able, good jobs for people to be able to pay those rents. That's the single biggest issue we have. With good jobs, AKA enough money flowing into the area, we can fix all wrongs. Everything can be fixed with money flowing into an area. And the only way money flows into an area at a high level is frankly jobs. Infrastructure helps. It kickstarts it. So look at the Gordie Howe Bridge. It has taken 6 years to complete, 29 million man hours, and those are good paying jobs. A lot of those jobs are very good paying. They're blue collar, but they're skilled labor, right? Here's the problem. When that's done, the job is done and the money shuts off. And then what we're left with are a few jobs at either end, making sure the tolls are paid and the border is secure. That's it, right? Like look at the data centers themselves. Data centers. We're going to create 2,500 new jobs in Lyon Township. Are you? No. You're creating 300 new jobs permanently. You're creating all those other jobs temporarily over the 18 months it's going to take to build the data center, right? This is why jobs are important. And this is why it's very important to diversify our economy, which is now pretty much 4 things, right? It is healthcare, obviously, Blue Cross and those guys. It is cars, not that many cars anymore, but we still do employ a significant number of auto manufacturers here, mainly white, a lot of white collar with Ford and General Motors. It's mortgages between Rocket and UWM. That's a lot of employment. And the 4th thing that Michigan does very, very well at this moment is pizza. Better than anybody else. I'm not even talking Detroit style pizza. I'm talking like the major franchises, Domino's, Jets, Little Caesars. These guys are from here. We do pizza, right? Even though Grandma Bob's is better. Now, fight anybody that says otherwise. The moral of the story is we need to fix this before we really start looking at very many other things. Because without jobs, it doesn't matter. Again, one man's opinion. Okay, let's get that off the screen. And thank you guys for the comments and participating tonight. I really appreciate it. And thank you for letting me work through my struggles because I have 2 screens tonight instead of 3 screens. Otherwise, I'd have the Instagram up on its own other screen like I normally do. Of course, my problem being, well, I just need a bigger suitcase. So that's on the list for the year. Great. There we go. And yes, I'm hitting wrong buttons because I'm not using my desktop. I'm not using anything that I'm normally using. So thank you for bearing with me while the struggle in this hotel room is in fact real. All right, guys, we're back to it again. Another salt shortage. Here we go. So Michigan roads are not getting the salt that they need, of course, again, because of, well, I wouldn't even say poor planning. It's let's be honest. We've had some mild winters. We haven't needed the salt in recent years. So now city officials are all scrambling to try to find as much salt as they can. That's basically the moral of the story, right? That's it. That's the entirety of the story. We're a month away from being through this thing. So let's just keep the faith and hopefully they plan better next year. How about that? How about we just go with that for the news article? I cannot believe that we have a salt shortage twice, by the way. We had one with the first winter blast, and of course, nobody did anything about it and said, hey, maybe we should stock up in Metro Detroit. No, they're like, it's probably over. Oh, salt shortage again. Okay. Good job, guys. Good job. I'm feeling funky tonight. I'm feeling kind of overly critical. Wow. I know a lot of you guys are not new here. I see a lot of the names on there. And I am so sorry for being so salty. You know what? It's because I really wanted that New York style pizza, which I'm going to go get directly after this. All right. Here it is, guys. And yet another fatality to corporate sponsorship is happening right now with the music hall in Detroit, which has accepted $20 million to be renamed the Orsa Music Hall. Orsa, of course, being a credit union, because that's what we need. So here in Michigan, and actually the entire United States, one of the coolest things that we get to do is put corporate names on buildings that used to have cooler names. Pine Knob, which is now back to Pine Knob. Thank you, Matt Ishbia. Thank you, Matt Ishbia. And sincerely, I mean that actually. And as a native son of our land, of this Metro Detroit, I thought that was a really cool thing that you actually got the naming rights just to put it back. But then what'd you do with Jimmy John's Field, which is now UWM Field? Cobo Hall, Comerica Park. It just feels to me like it just cheapens things or lessens things. Like these were not made to be corporate sponsored places. So I don't know. I have a very strong opinion on this. And I get it. $20 million, guys. $20 million for the music hall. They probably need it. They probably have a lack of public funding right now. There's an argument on both sides for everything, right? They could take this $20 million. There's a lot of good things they could do and use for it. But they better not rename the Fox Theater. They better not rename the Fisher. I mean, I think that would just be egregious and too far. Give me an amen on that. Thank you. Thank you. God, thank you, Chris. Different Chris. Oh, two Chris's. Cool. I like that. I like that. Okay, let's move on to the next story. Because we're almost through it. All right, so here's a feel good. I got to throw a good feel good in there every once in a while. You know I do. You know I like a good feel good. Used to be all feel good news, right? And I had this fundamental belief that I would only report positivity and I would only report good things that were happening. But then I started feeling like you deserve better than that, especially from somebody like me, where I'm working hard, even though I'm a local real estate agent. And yes, I would appreciate any business that you have to throw our way. My team members appreciate it. Their families appreciate it. And we are sincerely grateful for every single past client over the last 24 years. Sincerely grateful. Thank you. But I felt like I was beginning to do people like yourself a disservice by not talking about the not feel good stuff. And that's why I bring some of this to light. I try to come from an objective place, and then I might throw my opinion on it later on. That's my goal. My goal is to be a lot more objective than the current news, which is not hard to do, by the way. One man's opinion. All right, guys, Josh and Jace are home. They left Michigan. It was such a fun, and comment if you guys were watching their journey. Let me know if you were watching their journey, what you thought about their journey here in Michigan. I thought it was pretty amazing. I thought it was really cool to see these two guys come to Michigan in the dead middle of winter, experience the most wretched temperatures and ice that Michigan had to offer. And they loved every minute of it, except of course, when one of them went to the hospital and you know, that all happened. Right. But while they were here, they did good. And I like that so much. And they had this fundamental belief that they can good, which is really cool. So they ended up raising a total of $47,000, $34,000 one day, but ended up being $47,000 for a Grand Rapids homeless shelter that could desperately use that money, which I really like. I like that so much. Another thing they did though was they went with the exception of Jets, they went with a lot of small business owners, right? And a lot of times, especially when it's restaurants, and I worked in restaurants when I was in college. A lot of you know that about me. I talk about that quite frequently. But they worked with a lot of small business owners that put them on the map, that filled their restaurants back up, right? They highlighted small towns where tourism means the world to them. Where an extra 1,500 people that pass through a year means the difference between a struggling person that's got to shut down their business to, oh my gosh, I'm not struggling as much anymore. Because the reality is life is hard and it should be challenging on some level, but it shouldn't be challenging the way it has been for the last couple of years here. Tell me if you agree or disagree. That's up to you. Thank you, that girl. I will. I appreciate that. And thank you for that. Good comment. She said I can answer after I put the points, like the actual points on, then I can give my answer to the situation, or what I think about it, my commentary, should I say. Thank you. And if somebody doesn't like my commentary, guys, if somebody doesn't like what I have to say, or somebody disagrees with me at any and all times, please push back on me. I am nowhere near right all the time. In fact, as even my team members will tell you, I'm probably wrong between 82 and 84% of the time. So I'm a big boy, I can handle it. And then they helped this lady. If I remember right, she was in the UP with a book launch that she was doing. That was a children's book, which was really cool. They featured her a couple of times on a couple of different posts. And when you got people of this influence or magnitude doing stuff like this, it really warms my heart, because most of the time when I'm looking at influencers, all I'm seeing are people that are trying to raise a buck for themselves. And I'm not saying that they're not. I'm not saying that there isn't ulterior motive for income and creating a living for their life and the life that they desire, right? And the life by their own design, and that's great. But if you can do that and help people along the way, God bless. I love that. As an aside, at the Perna Team, our number one charity that we support is Forgotten Harvest. We volunteer there on a regular basis. We move tens of thousands of pounds of food. We go to the farm in Fenton, and we farm tens of thousands of pounds of food every year. We are very big proponents of that specific charity. In addition to that, we're going to be layering in Focus Hope this year, which is one that's near and dear to my heart, because I went to UD Jesuit High School, and that charity was co-started by a Jesuit, right? Father Cunningham, a long time ago when Detroit needed it. Yeah. That girl, that's an interesting comment. So the comment is, or question, why did they target Detroit when it was booming? What was the real purpose for purposely destroying Detroit? It depends on what era you mean. If you're talking about the 60s into the 70s, or the 50s into the 60s, really, I'm sorry. Or if you're talking about more recently, like during the 2008 financial crash, those were the two biggest kind of pain points for the city of Detroit, other than Kwame himself. But we were at a good economy with Kwame, so it didn't really hurt that much, even though it did probably hurt our pride more. I would love to have that discussion. I studied Detroit history on a very granular level and can speak to both of those things. In fact, I might do a live on just that, because that would take me about a half an hour to get through. Because there'll be questions around it as well. I want to make sure I'm stopping and answering the questions, but I like that. I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to take a picture of your comment so I don't forget it. And then maybe next week. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Next week, I'll have extra time after, so we can stick in, and for a solid 20 minutes, I'll go through the history of Detroit. And if you can't make it, that's okay, because the lives will be posted. Then you can just scroll to the back 20 minutes of it, and then that will kind of walk through that. And of course, I'm always available for any sort of questions or commentary or just good conversation. Never say no to that. Okay, let's get to the next thing. Okay, now this is pretty cool. I know. I got a lot of flack because I did a post on this, and people are like, what are you even talking about? There it is. Okay, let's pull this guy up on the screen. God, thanks for sticking in on Thursday night, guys. This is great. I don't know if it's great, but I'm having a good time with you guys. Okay, guys. So, according to Homes to Go, which is it like tracks Airbnbs and VRBOs and stuff like that. Detroit is one of 2026's rising star tourist cities to visit. I'm not even kidding. We're doing it. We're on the scene. What you can't see behind my face, of course, is actually, let me do it this way so you can see it. Move that just a little bit. Is that the search trend year over year for people looking for hotels or rooms or VRBOs or Airbnbs in the city of Detroit is up 120%. Craziness. I keep telling people, Detroit does have some modicum of tourism. Why would they be putting in so many hotels if they don't? And so many luxury hotels? Well, yes, we do, right? We actually have tourists that want to come and see the Motor City. But not just the Motor City, guys. The Movement City. The city that birthed techno, right? Birthed Motown, Eminem, all those other things, which is all true. And by the way, if you haven't gone to Movement, it is a fantastic festival. It used to be called DEMF, the Detroit Electronic Music Festival, back in the day when Carl Cox, and Carl Craig for that matter, were all more involved with it. Paxley had a bigger involvement with it, which of course now is Movement. Had more commercialized, higher ticket prices than it was. It used to be free. First year was free, literally. First 2 years were free, I think, and then third year was $25. And Ford Motor got involved at that point, and the city of Detroit got involved and things like that. But all I'm saying is, I love this so much that we are now getting on the map in so many different ways across the country, but also internationally. I think it's so cool. Okay. And of course, tourism means dollars again pouring into an area. I mean, look at Traverse City, right? That's tens, hundreds of millions of dollars that pour into that area over a 4-month period. That city literally balloons from like 12,000 people or however many it has to over 100,000 for like a couple of months. It's kind of crazy. My marketing guy grew up there, and he tells me about like the stories of like how in the summers it would just like balloon. Not that we're going to get that far with Detroit, but man, I welcome every tourist dollar that comes our way. Yeah, I think I might do a live stream just on that. And yes, the most talented did come out of Detroit. Thank you very much. You know what? Even though you're Canadian, we'll keep you. I'm kidding. I have no issue with Canadians at all. They're just so nice. They're such nice people. Actually, I spent some time with a friend of mine from Canada here at this conference, and I always reminded how nice Canadians are. He's such a nice guy. Such a nice guy. Like all the please and the thank yous. Greg is a gem. Greg Homry, if you're on here, you are a gem, sir. You are a gem. I feel like all I'm doing right now is calling out people. Okay, here we go. This is pretty cool. You guys have probably seen this because I know I've done at least one post on this, probably more. Detroit is the city of the design for the year 2026, guys. Year of design, or city of the year for design for 2026. This is crazy to me that we got picked. All right, so let me give you a little history and tell you why this was. So number one, no American city. This is a British rag. This is a British publication. Wallpaper. It's a British design publication. No American city has been picked since Miami in 2005. We're the ones. We are the ones. Detroit, Michigan. Yes. Which I think is actually really cool, by the way, that we are the ones. And the reason is because of how we've come back, keeping as much of the historic architecture like Michigan Central and the Guardian building, the Fisher building, and we have new structures going in like the Hudson building that's tastefully architecturally designed, right? Versus, let's say, actually London, right? London's a good example. So post World War II, if you go to London right now, you're going to see some beautiful architecture, right? I mean, I'm talking like Big Ben. I'm talking, not the London Bridge, the other one, Tower Bridge. All the castles and palaces and stuff like that. But then every once in a while, you're going to see one of the most industrial, ugly looking buildings, apartment or commercial or office, just in the middle of nowhere. And what happened was during World War II, when Nazi Germany was bombing London, those buildings went down, of course, and brute architecture was very in post World War II. It was not in very long, by the way, and it's quite ugly. I remember a friend of mine, Chris, explaining this to me when we were walking in downtown London. And I was like, wow, why? Just literally why? But I really like that they gave us a nod for how hard the city and the state has worked, and they have worked hard to try to push keeping the current architecture, keeping the current buildings and the current facades of those buildings intact and beautiful. Because let's be honest, we cannot build things like this again. It took $1 billion to rehab Michigan Central the right way. Like Ford Motor had to go reopen 2 different quarries to get the quartz and the marble from the original 2 quarries that was mined from, so it matches perfectly as it did, right? These buildings are not going to be built again, or at least not anywhere in the near future. And I appreciate and respect Wallpaper Magazine for giving us the nod and making us the 2026 City of Design, because of how much Detroit has come back and how hard the work was to get it there, to preserve. And they got a couple of photos. There's, of course, the new Hudson's building. That is actually, I don't think that's Detroit either, actually. They just threw other photos in there. Great. Good job. Okay, on to the next. And what is up next? Okay, so I believe in education. I do not like giving a political opinion. So this is not going to be a political opinion. This is going to be just what is happening in the world today as it relates to Detroit and Metro Detroit. So don't shoot the messenger. I'm only going to spend like 30 seconds on this thing because it's important for people to know, not important for people to know my opinion. All right, guys. President Trump the other day said that he would like to see a federal takeover of the elections in Michigan and more specifically in Detroit but Michigan in general, because he feels like these elections are being tampered with in the state. There we go. No opinion, just the facts of the situation. I'll read any comments you guys have on that, though, if there are any comments. Oh, Motor City. My mother's 96 and moved to Detroit in 1946 at the age of 16 and said the train station was beautiful and bustling with people. And in fact, it was. And wow, and I'm kind of curious, if you're still on, where did they move in from? So my grandfather came over about that time from Italy. He actually worked in Detroit, not at that train station, but in Detroit for 4 years. It took him to be able to bring my grandmother, my father, and his 3 sisters to Michigan, which was so cool that he was willing to work that hard and be apart from his family for 4 years for a better life for his family. There are a lot of people in a lot of different countries with that story. My other grandfather did work as a baggage handler, and in fact, on Christmas, he always worked Christmas Eve because there was extra pay. And my older cousins, would go to the train station and help him as a baggage handler so he can get home a little earlier on Christmas Eve, spend it with the family, which is interesting. Okay, let's move on to the next story, because that's about as much time as I want to spend on that. Unless anybody has something to say. I will always respect every opinion. I will always listen to every opinion. So speaking of elections, and we are talking elections because election season is coming upon us pretty quick here, guys. As much as we think it is not, it is. At least here in Michigan, it is. Here we go. Yep. All right, guys. So we have 11 candidates that want to be governor here in the state of Michigan. It is a varied field. It is people left, people right, people center, all of it. There are a lot of different contenders with a lot of different agendas and a lot of different ideas. And of course, a lot of this is going to come down to the money. So the top three right now in the race are going to be, where'd she go? Yep, Benson. Benson, of course, raised just shy of $1 million last year. What was it? $995,000. Jared James, who raised $838,000, who's a current state senator. And then we've got Mike Dugan, who took in $643,000. Okay, so those are going to be our top 3 contenders, and most likely who's going to make it out of the primary, because they have the ability to spend themselves through the primary to get through it. So then you got to ask yourselves, when you're going into the voting this year, which one of these 3 have the platform that I wish to align with the most, or that I feel the best about? I encourage everyone to get on their websites, take the time to read all 3 platforms. I don't care if you're left or right. I don't care if you're down the middle, right? I'm not going to tell you what I am. I will say this. I'm going to read the position papers for all 3 because I want to be informed. I want to know. I might even Google it. Might even use some AI around and say, hey, look, these are the 3 people. Can you give me their top 5 things that they want to accomplish being governor of Michigan, each one, or something, right? I want to be an informed constituent, right? Informed on both sides, which is something I think has gotten clouded because of, frankly, the media, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Sucks, but it is what it is. So that said, those 3 are probably who is going to come down to over the next couple of months. So I again highly encourage you guys to look into it. I highly encourage you guys to not use a news source of any kind. I encourage you to go to their websites where their position should be clearly marked at this point in time in the race on pretty much everything that matters. Or use maybe AI to say, hey, can you scrape these 3 websites and then literally feed it the 3 URLs and maybe even put all 3 next to each other, like how to handle job growth, how to handle population growth, how to handle taxes, because each one of these guys are looking at the same thing from very, very, very different ways. And I think it's very interesting. And I think here in Michigan, at least lately, we seem to have had a little more bipartisan support than for certain things than usual, or than last year or the year before. So that I think is a good thing, because I think the only way a system is truly broken is when the people stop talking to each other and they're only going to be talking at each other. And that's where we've been in politics for a while now. And that's sad. There was a time where we can each voice our different opinion and yet come together and put together some sort of a bill or a resolution to say, okay, this is something that I might not feel good about. I feel like I lost something, but they also feel like they lost something. As long as we're both losing something and we're both winning something, let's just go ahead and move this thing forward for the American people. Used to be a day like that. I'm hoping that day's coming back to Michigan, or hope it is back to Michigan. It's the other thing that I studied, by the way, with politics, clearly. All right. And then let me just check Instagram, make sure I'm catching everybody. Okay, cool. All right. Liking these comments tonight, guys. Good job. Good job. What do we have for the next one? Oh, yeah, that's right. So, again, with the news. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just like sigh like that, like it was a bad thing. Although I personally think it's a bad thing. Well, let me tell you what it is, and then I'll tell you what I feel about it. It's a great point. And I apologize. I forget to do that sometimes. I'm human. I'm so sorry. I will always apologize when I do that. Okay, here we go. USA Today officially buys the Detroit News. Why is this so important? Why is this news? Like that's it. That was the news. USA Today buys Detroit News. So USA Today now owns both the Detroit News and the Detroit Free Press. So you have the same company, actually one of the largest news companies, news organizations in the world. They have over 200 large publications, now owning more and more and more news. These are the two major rags in Metro Detroit. So these are the two biggest circulated points of news in Metro Detroit for Metro Detroiters. And the fact that they're both owned by the same company makes me uncomfortable and causes me to think twice and say, maybe I should be looking elsewhere for my news, because a lot of times the corporate on top controls the news at the bottom. May not necessarily control the spin. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it just simply controls the stories that we get to see or not see, right? Let's not forget, Jeff Bezos bought the New York Times. There was a reason he did it. Okay. Just putting that nugget out there. And this stuff all fascinates me, by the way. Just the inner workings of all this stuff just fascinates me. Okay, guys, so this one was a little controversial. So I'm going to want some comments on this. Michigan nears cell phone bans in classrooms. It's going to be happening. And of course, here's how it works. So Farmington Junior High, high school, but a junior was quoted around this is actually a really good article. If you guys haven't read it, it's on the Detroit News right now. It's on their website. Basically, it goes through how it kind of works and how it doesn't work. So here are both sides of this story. Side number one, and tell me if there are more sides that I'm missing that I'm not at least thinking of. At least these are the majority of the things that I hear from people. There we go. Got my comments ready. Point number one. Teachers are struggling in classrooms. Wait. Oh my gosh, there's a video. Get out of there. Teachers are struggling in classrooms to keep their students' attention. I mean, we've known that for a long time, right? That's nothing new. That's been going on since like the 50s. Let's be real. Nobody wants to listen to the teacher. But even more so with cell phones, right? Because people are on the scroll, they're not paying attention, they're texting their friends in the class, they're doing all those different things, right? So at first people were like, hey, look, I think we just need to get rid of cell phones in their entirety. Maybe we'll put a ban on them even being on school grounds. Like there was talk of it going even that far. But there's a secondary problem with that. With a lot of these school shootings, you have people that are phoning out or texting out in real time, kids, to police, to parents, to friends outside. So police have better real-time intel on where that active shooter is. So that could be a problem for protection. Now, one side then came back and said, well, I think maybe we can ban the cell phones on the campus because the teachers have their cell phone. But what if it's the teacher? What if it's the teacher that it becomes incapacitated? So there's pros and cons to all of this. So basically where we're sitting right now is that it just can't be used during class time. That's it. Phones in bags can't come out. And I think personally that is the right move. Tell me if you guys think I'm wrong. Oh, I lost my Instagram, people. I'll get you back. My computer is doing a thing. Not a good thing. Oh yeah, no, my computer's definitely doing a thing right now. I'm so sorry, guys. I should have been using my much more powerful desktop. My laptop is just not cutting it today. Yeah, this is what happens when you're on the road and you still want to make sure that you're delivering. Okay, but it's okay because we're down to like 2 more stories because we've been going at this for almost an hour and a half. Thank you guys for sticking in. I appreciate that. And you know what? I'm going to go deeper in on the Jeff Bezos thing. I'm going to do a little bit more research because I would prefer to be 100% prepared and not just put my opinion out there. But I will bring that back up next week. I did note that comment. Thank you. So that's going to be a thing. Okay, I'm going to put you back over there. There we go. Oh, well, that just didn't work now, did it? Yeah, Boys and Girls Club. They're getting $30 million to new career programs at Michigan Central. You guys probably saw this. We saw Usher and Big Sean, and Usher was at the game, and now they're giving $1 million themselves to the Boys and Girls Club at Michigan Central, which is so good. These are the types of things and investments that this city, I believe, needs. People that are stepping up, Detroiters and people from outside Detroit, recognizing our youth has a need that's being underfulfilled and stepping up and working to fill that gap and using their fame to do so. I think that's very important to note because these are famous people. I mean, I guess Usher, it maybe not be as famous as he used to be, but I like Usher, by the way. I like his music. That said, I think seeing more of this happening in the world is what we need in the world. If you have a chance, go to Usher's page, comment, tell him he's doing a great job, whatever you want to tell him, because I think he is doing a great job with this. Yep, I am locked out of my own live, aren't I? Oh my gosh, I am so sorry, Instagram. Something happened where I am 100% locked out. That's a sad day. Can I get back in? Nope. My computer just did it and I'm out. So I'm so sorry. I'm not going to be able to see your comments until after the rest of this live. But thankfully, we only have one more thing to do. Okay. Usually I like to end with the feel good, but tonight I am not. I'm going to end with this instead. And again, it's a very short story, but it was something that caught my attention. I wanted to just bring it to attention. I always like to end with something either that feels really good, maybe like a new restaurant or that we tried recently that you guys should be trying. Eat local, by the way, or feel good or something like that. But this one is just more of an oddity. Okay. Yeah. So apparently, there we go. Apparently, a woman dropped off a human skull to Goodwill in Chelsea, Michigan, or at least a seemingly human skull. Was not sure at the time of report. I will report back with more information and see if it's human or not. But police are looking for the person that had dropped this off. It was a woman. She had sunglasses on. Actually, do we have a picture? Did they include a picture in the article? No, they did not. Okay. Basically, the picture was incoherent. You couldn't even tell who it was or what they looked like. But yet there was a human-like skull dropped off at Goodwill among a whole bag of other stuff. I don't know how that happens. I don't know why that happens. And I don't know why Chelsea, Michigan specifically. If anybody has any ideas on why Chelsea, if there's something going on in Chelsea, Michigan that I don't know about, that you feel I need to know about, let me know because I'm kind of curious. But that's it, guys. We're at 83 minutes. That's a good long time. I have a couple of other things that I'm actually not going to cover. I'm going to push to next week because I try to keep it under an hour, but again, you guys were amazing tonight with your questions and your comments. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through the rest of the comments that I did not get to see on Instagram directly after this. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to do the research on Jeff Bezos buying New York Times because I want to make sure that I'm not just spouting opinion. I want to make sure I'm telling the objective truth. And then I'm also going to prepare a longer Zoom on the fall, the rise, the fall, and the rise of Detroit. Or not a Zoom, but a live. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I'll probably do that maybe on a Tuesday night or something, just as its own one-off, because I think that'd be a lot of fun. Thank you guys again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. My name is Mike Perna, Metro Detroit local real estate agent, and you guys make it a great rest of your night.